Welcome back to Talk Property to Me. My name is Brad East.
I'm Aaron Downey, and today we're going to be talking about breaking down specific liabilities and dependents and how that impacts your borrowing capacity.
Stick around to the end because I will also be going through some practical tips and tricks to increase your borrowing capacity. And in this case, it would actually increase your borrowing capacity by 41%. So stick around till the end. Also, if you haven't done already, click the like, subscribe buttons and share this with anyone you can. So I'm running this as a bit of a case study, just so it's easy to manage here. So we're basing it on a couple earning $100,000 each. They're looking to purchase their first home. They've got a 20% deposit. I know that's unrealistic in this day and age, but the purpose of this case study, they've got a 20% deposit. And what we're going to look at is how certain liabilities and dependents change their borrowing capacity. So the baseline borrowing capacity, and I've chosen one lender for this scenario just so that we're not swapping between them, just so
for sure.
It's a
maintain consistency.
Yeah, bit consistency here. So with no liabilities, no dependents, so the couple are on $100,000 each. They're doing all right. They're doing good. Their borrowing capacity is $1 million and 46,000. So $1,046,000.
And regardless if it's 100,000 each, it could be that one of them's not working and one's on a sole income of 200,000. Same
Correct.
scenario.
So it's combined.
Yeah.
So if we break down then what liabilities do to that borrowing capacity, bearing in mind it was $1,046,000. Now the most common one that I see as a broker is the car loan.
Yeah.
So $80,000 car loan over 5 years at 9% interest. Again, quite common.
Yeah.
The new borrowing capacity is $829,000. So that's a reduction of $217,000 or 20%, 20.8% to be precise.
Which is massive. And if you cut that car loan in half, even 40 grand, which is like a standard SUV now or sedan,
That's 10%.
You're still taking 10% off your borrowing capacity, which, for a lot of people, like $100,000 salary or $200,000 household income, that's not unrealistic. We're not putting unrealistic figures in here.
Yep. Now this is very common.
And for $1 million purchase, like you can buy a pretty decent place for $1 million.
Yep. And then all of a sudden now you're buying at $830,000.
Yeah, which isn't so good.
Yeah. So that makes a big difference. That's $217,000 difference for an $80,000 car over 5 years.
Yeah.
So what we'll do next is the next common thing. So I've run some numbers, and the average credit card limit that we see combined, so this isn't just with one lender, it could be a 5 and a 5, is $20,000 per couple.
Yeah.
So combined within the couple.
And just to be clear, that's a $20,000 limit. That's not $20,000 owing on your credit card.
Yeah. So just to clarify on that a little bit further, lenders will work out the effect on your borrowing capacity with a credit card based on the limit, not on the balance.
Yeah.
Because you could go out this afternoon and buy $20,000 worth of things.
Take out the $1 million mortgage, go and buy $20,000 worth of
whatever
clothes.
Now, how they work that out, most lenders actually work it out at 3.8% of the limit. So if it's a $10,000 limit, that's $380 per month.
Yeah.
So it does add up. That is quite a lot, $380 a month. That's almost a car loan in some cases.
Yeah, exactly.
So back to the scenario, we've added the car loan, that's dropped by $217,000. Now, if we added that $20,000 credit card limit across the application, the new borrowing capacity is now $736. So it's dropped from $829 down to $736. Or the total drop from the original is 11.21.
Yeah. It's huge.
So it's another big drop.
Yeah.
So we're now down, 30-odd%.
The difference of this, $1 million, which is or $1,050,000, the original capacity, that's a 2-bedroom unit in a good location in Sydney, or a 3-bedroom house in Western Sydney.
Yeah.
You're then taking yourself to, just with the car loan, not being able to really buy in Sydney, maybe a 1-bedroom unit, to potentially a rent vesting situation where you're buying out of town.
And again, this isn't uncommon.
No.
This happens all the time.
Yeah.
Now, this next one actually surprised me the most, was dependence. So it surprised me in a good way. So Adding one dependent in dropped the borrowing capacity by 49,000, which is 6.7%.
So a big difference compared to each scenario with the car loan
Correct.
and credit card.
Yeah, and then you've got adding two dependents is a further drop of 5.31, so another drop of $36,000, and adding a third dependent drops another 5.7 or $37,000 in borrowing capacity.
Yeah.
So if we average that out, it's around sort of 5.8% drop per dependent.
So having two kids is the same as having a $20,000 credit card, or having three kids is less of an effect than having a car loan.
Correct. It's still less.
Yeah.
You could have three kids and borrow more than if you had no children but had the car loan.
Yeah. Essentially, you can have four kids, which will be equivalent to a $80,000 car loan.
So although having dependents does affect your borrowing capacity, it's not as much as I actually had thought drilling down into it.
Yeah, it's good to see it represented as a percentage.
So if you're thinking of having kids, just have the kids.
Yeah.
It's not going to drop your borrowing capacity as much as having a car loan.
I think a really important thing to note here with this is I talk to a lot of people, and of course, if they're investing in property, they're just wanting to try and get a good ROI on their money.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realise that, especially with debt at 6%, or in this case, a car loan at 9%, if you can pay out your car loan, a 9% return on an investment is a good investment. So
100%.
if you're paying out a 9% interest rate on your car loan, technically that's an investment by getting rid of that debt.
It is same with the credit card.
Yeah.
It's at 20%
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Pay it off. As stupid as that sounds. Other things you can look at doing to increase your borrowing capacity in this situation. Let's say you did have the car, you did have the credit card. You can consolidate the credit cards into personal loans over 7-year periods.
Yeah.
It's then got an end date. So instead of it being, let's just use a $10,000, instead of the repayment being $380, it's paid off over 7 years. That repayment's going to be closer to sort of, I don't know, $150 a month. It's not much.
Yeah.
So your borrowing capacity would increase. Credit cards have a huge effect per dollar. Same with obviously the car loan does as well. So if we look at the impact of each, which is the cumulative impact, the car loan only dropped the percentage, so the borrowing capacity down by 20.8%. Car loan and credit card dropped it in 29%. A dependent was 34%. Second dependent dropped it a slight amount more. And then by the time we had three dependents plus all of it, your borrowing capacity was down 40%, 41.4%.
Which is typical for, a family nowadays of two or three dependents. They've typically got a credit card, they've typically got a car loan, if not two. So your borrowing capacity, you're reducing by roughly 40%.
Yeah.
And we can sit here and just highlight these figures and tell people how bad they're doing because they have personal loans and credit cards. But like you said, with consolidating a lot of that debt, there's different ways to go about it and still try and get into the market.
Yep.
Whether you can consolidate the credit cards and car loans or whatever, or even if it's consolidating it into the mortgage, or getting rid of the credit card and then getting another credit card once you've got the mortgage because they're not going to refinance that mortgage.
And if you're a first home buyer, with all the current government schemes, you only need 5% deposit. So get your 5% deposit, put it away, put it in a term deposit or whatever you need to do, and then focus what you were saving. Instead of just punching it into the savings, use the same amount to punch into your credit cards or your car loan to pay them off before you apply.
Yeah.
Because if we look at those, the incremental drops now, so it was a 20.8% drop for the car loan. Credit card was 11%. Dependents are around 6 to 5%-ish, from not a huge amount.
So, I mean, in that situation as well, let's just say that people didn't have any kids and they didn't have a credit card, let's say, but they had a car loan. They want to increase their borrowing capacity, or they want to try and get a more expensive house, so they continue to save, or they try and get a pay rise at work. Mostly pay rises aren't of 20%, and you're not going to save an extra 20% and outsave the market.
If you're on 100K, good luck going and speaking to your boss and saying, I want an extra 20K.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's not just increasing it by 20,000, it's increasing it by 20,000 plus the 37% tax as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're actually increasing it by, 35,000 or so
to get your
the
net
equivalent
amount.
to get the equivalent of just closing a car loan.
Yeah.
So close the car loan or earn another 35,000.
Yeah.
So you can see why it affects so much. It really does. So you need to, we've all been guilty of it. Car loans are the trap with a lot of younger people.
Yeah.
Especially at that sort of price range. That 80K, that's I want to look like I'm earning a shitload of money car.
Yeah.
When in fact I'm an apprentice. I didn't really need the Ranger Wild Track or whatever the hell they're called.
Yeah.
Probably could have got a $20,000 Navara or something, but don't let the the vanity get in the way of what your future goals are going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Really look at that. And if you do have the $80,000 car, can you downgrade it for a couple of years?
Yeah.
Sell it, pay out that loan, get a loan at $10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone ever said anything to you, tell them I'm buying a house.
Yeah, 100%.
No one's going to give a shit.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
No.
Especially if it's a trade ute or something like that.
No.
You say, I was over getting scratches up the side of my $80,000 car. End of story.
That's the thing. Like, there's ways to get into the market. For a lot of people, there's not, and I recognise that there's a lot of people who just are unfortunate enough to not be able to get in. But for a lot of people who earn, and especially if you're earning $100,000, you can get into the market.
Oh, for sure. So we'll look at some quick tips and tricks. So obviously the first one we've talked about: pay down your loans, lower your credit card limits, get rid of them as soon as you can. Increase your income. We've talked about that as well. Overtime's another option, but lenders only accept 80% of, or most only accept 80% of overtime income. Mm-hmm. Some will do 100% if it's if you're a nurse or an essential industry and it's consistent. But you need to have consistent overtime income over a 6 to 12 month period, depending on the lender. So it's not, you can't just go do a shitload this week and then next week expect that your borrowing capacity is increased. So it's a long-term thing as well. If there's overtime, do it for 6 to 12 months before you can even use it.
Yeah.
Reduce your living expenses. Lenders do look at this. They'll look at your living expenses. Some will even look through your bank statements and get a calculator out.
Yeah.
We try to avoid those lenders for obvious reasons, especially just after Christmas. What does everyone do over the Christmas break? They get on an absolute
Black Fridays that just absolutely wiped out their credit card.
Yeah, we go through the bank statements and you send that to a lender and they go, wow, this guy spends $600 a week on booze. No, it was Christmas.
Yeah.
And they don't care.
Yeah.
They'll just annualise that. They'll go, that's what he spent in January. That's what he spends every month.
Yeah.
So we would avoid lenders like that. So that sort of goes on to the next part, which is speak to a mortgage broker. When you speak to a mortgage broker, they're working out your borrowing capacity before you're lodging an application.
Yeah.
If you go see a branch lender, you're showing them all your cards. And if they don't like one, they're going to send you away. It's embarrassing. You'll be deflated. Yeah. You'll probably lose all motivation. Speak to a mortgage broker. If you don't have one, obviously reach out to me. I'll give a judgment-free consultation. You're speaking directly with me as well. So I would then look at all of this situation for you and say, if you close this, it's going to increase by this amount. This is obviously just a case study. Each individual person's going to have different outcomes.
Yeah, for sure.
But that is something that you need to do, whether it's me or another broker. Sit down with them and figure out what your capacity is and build a plan if you're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
Literally speak to people and go, you need to do X, Y, Z and come back.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
A lot of the time anyway.
For sure.
So that's it for today. If you've got any suggested topics for the next podcast, throw it in the comments. We're always open for feedback as well. If you like what you're seeing, throw a comment in there as well.
See you on the next one.
Thank you.